Russia targets Ukrainian energy infrastructure, leaving millions without electricity for winter. Putin says it's a response to last week's attack that used UK and US missiles.
Portugal's Prime Minister said €20 million would be invested in the police force and National Guard, but unions say it isn't enough.
Sweden urged the return of the Chinese ship to Swedish waters to facilitate the investigation opened after undersea cables were damaged last week.
Two politicians filed requests for annulation of the Romanian presidential elections on grounds of unlawful campaigning and voting irregularities. The Constitutional Court will evaluate. Winter conditions get harsher for Ukrainians as Russia intensifies its attacks on the country's energy infrastructure. Early Thursday morning, scores of missiles and drones launched across the entire country, targeting the energy grid and leaving more than 1 million Ukrainians without electricity. Ukrainian Air Defense reported that 176 missiles and drones out of 188 have been intercepted. Russian President Vladimir Putin said that the attacks were a response to Ukraine's attacks with UK and US weapons last week. However, Moscow has been targeting the energy grid every winter since the invasion began. Over 280,000 households in the northwestern Rivne region were without electricity because of the attack. There were also interruptions to water supplies in affected areas. One of the strikes in the Odessa region killed 2 and injured 3, including a 16-year-old boy.
Просто стеклами завалило. У дитя ранение, зашили ногу пока. Но у нас нету ни в одной комнате, нигде ни одного окна, нету дверей внутри. У нас везде вылетели окна. У нас шоковое состояние. Мы остались на зиму, считайте, в одной коробке. Все, ни окон, ни дверей, нигде нету.
Also in the Volvin region, 215,000 households lost electricity. All critical infrastructure that lost power has been switched to generators.
Portugal's government announced plans to invest €20 million in 600 new vehicles for the country's police force and National Guard. Portugal's Prime Minister said the extra investment was necessary and stated that he wanted to value the careers of public administration employees, especially security forces. However, Portugal's National Police Union said the investment was insufficient and below requirements. The union president said some Portuguese police equipment is in varying states of decay, and without investment, the police grind to a halt.
Several media reported that Sweden urged the return of the Chinese cargo ship to Swedish waters in order to facilitate the investigation that was opened after undersea cables were damaged in the Baltic Sea. The Chinese vessel, which is currently in international waters between Sweden and Denmark, became a key suspect after it was reported in the area at the time the cables were severed. Sweden, Finland, and Germany launched investigations last week into the incident and raised questions about potential sabotage.
Det der med, at man påstår, at det er et hændeligt uheld måske, så har man ikke 2 hændelige uheld inden for det samme døgn. Altså.
Og det så begynder lige pludselig at ligge stille, og i det her tilfælde oven på 3 kabler. Det er ikke en normal adfærd for et handelsskib.
Sweden's Prime Minister Ulf Kristersson said that he is not making any accusations, but wants to seek clarity on what has happened.
2 candidates that were eliminated in the first round of Romanian presidential elections filed requests to the country's constitutional court to annul the results on the grounds of irregularities, breach of voting rules, and unlawful campaigning. The requests come after a far-right candidate, Calin Georgescu, took a surprise lead in the election and now going to the second round to become the president. Mostly campaigning on social media platforms like TikTok, Georgescu became suddenly popular and a subject of concern because of his anti-EU and anti-NATO messages. Meanwhile, protests against the result of the first round continue on the third evening. 2,000 opponents of Georgescu gathered in Victoria Square, while his supporters came together at the University Square. People also took to streets in different locations.
Nu vrem un lider legionar, un lider fascist, cineva care să ne aducă războiul la graniță.
Doresc ca România să nu se întoarcă în urmă cu 35 de ani, Îmi doresc să nu fie acesta ultimul protest și ultimul moment în care pot să ies în stradă.
Dumneavoastră, cei de la presa privată, i-ați răsărmăcit vorbele în fel și chip. Nu a spus niciodată că este anti-UE, nu a spus niciodată că este anti-NATO. Îndeamnă numai la pace.
The Constitutional Court will be evaluating both requests on Thursday and investigate the claims.
Switzerland and the EU are coming closer to reaching an agreement on how much the neutral country should pay the bloc to access its internal market, according to top diplomats. Despite not being an EU member state, Switzerland voluntarily contributes to EU cohesion funds. This gives it partial access to the European internal market. Swiss and EU ambassadors say they're close to reaching an agreement and hope to do so before the year is over.
The autobiography of former German Chancellor Angela Merkel, Freedom, will be published in 31 countries. In Berlin, there was a huge crowd at the Dussmann Book House with hundreds of people coming to have the book signed. Many are curious and hope to find out more about Merkel's view on things within the 736 pages.
I do think she's responsible for everything that is happening today in Europe. Basically, she was the one who established this kind of connections with Russia, which made Germany dependent and the whole Europe dependent, and she is the one who basically blocked Ukraine from joining NATO in 2008 when it was still possible.
Merkel wrote her book together with her longtime political advisor, Beate Baumann. It is a look at her life and her path from pastor's daughter in the GDR to federal chancellor.
Ich fand sie als Person sehr wichtig für Europa, für die ganze Welt, nämlich weil sie keine Populistin war und für die Freiheit stand. Und heutzutage wollen die Leute wieder Autokraten wählen und wählen Autokraten. Und wir werden uns nochmal nostalgisch an Angela Merkel und die Freiheit zurückerinnern.
Merkel will go on a reading tour. The events in Stralsund and Cologne were sold out within a very short time.
Das Interesse an Angela Merkels Memoiren ist nicht nur in Deutschland groß. Am 2. Dezember wird die Altkanzlerin ihr Buch mit dem ehemaligen US-Präsidenten Barack Obama in Washington vorstellen. Diana Resnick aus Berlin für Euronews.
Albanian opposition lawmakers and hundreds of their supporters blocked the main streets of Tirana, the capital, on Tuesday, accusing the government led by the Socialist Party of Prime Minister Edi Rama of corruption, manipulating elections and seizing the powers of the judiciary. They demand it to be replaced by a technocratic caretaker cabinet where experts rather than politicians make decisions until the 2025 parliamentary elections. Clashes broke out between protesters and anti-riot police trying to clear the streets. The protest ended after 3 hours with the opposition leaders pledging to continue with rallies all around the country. The Conservative Democratic Party and its supporters have also been protesting the arrest of their leader, Sali Berisha, claiming the corruption charges are politically motivated.
Wayne Holsworth became an advocate for banning Australian children younger than 16 from social media. That is because last year his 17-year-old son Mac committed suicide after falling victim to an online sextortion scam. A 47-year-old man from Sydney, posing as an 18-year-old girl, demanded money for an intimate image that the boy had shared. Since then, the grieving father has taken his tragic story to schools in the country and warned students of the risks of social media.
I presented to now over 10,000 people, of which 3,000 are secondary school children. I asked them to put their hand up if they would support it. Yes, they support it. They're the kids that are supporting it. We can't rely on the tech giants to help. It's not in their interests. So we have to take control.
But not all parents, lawmakers or experts are convinced that banning young children from social media is the answer.
I understand both the limits of that particular policy and the expert evidence that is coming out from people who work in this space about the problems for young people being excluded from those spaces. I also think there's very significant privacy concerns for all Australians who may, in fact, be required to give up some of their privacy in pursuit of this particular policy.
Platforms such as X and Instagram announced that they find the ban problematic. Australia's House of Representatives on Wednesday voted overwhelmingly in favor of the ban, and the Senate is expected to make it law soon. Once it enters into force, even parental consent will not be able to override the ban.
Long lines formed outside of a bakery in Deir el-Balah. People are desperate to buy a bag of bread. The World Food Programme warned that bakeries in central Gaza are shutting down as a result of severe shortages and limited aid reaching the areas.
The World Food Programme says that all bakeries in central Gaza have shut down due to severe supply shortages. Bread is a lifeline for many families in Gaza. It's often the only food they can access. Now, even that is slipping out of reach.
Earlier this week, Israel and Hezbollah agreed to a ceasefire deal. Many had hoped the agreement would have induced a truce in Gaza as well, where the war has stretched on for almost 14 months. But in northern Gaza, hundreds of Palestinians continue to flee as Israel's latest offensive in the region rages on. Almost no humanitarian aid is able to reach the area, and food security experts previously warned that famine is imminent.